Hello, everybody. This is another version of GYN ONC Garage, where we look at papers that are current and have something special about them that we want to draw your attention to. My name's Ed Pavlik. I'm in Lexington, Kentucky, and my colleague is
Frank Lawton from London, UK.
Very good. What we are, dealing with today is the opportunity to look at an assay for endometrial cancer that can be done pretty much at home, in the doctor's office, or through collection of urine. That paper appeared in, stop.
Yeah, I don't know what it was in either. I didn't write it down. There we are.
That paper appeared in Cancer Genetics and Epigenetics. It's basically a gene methylation testing paper. What's really noteworthy about it is that the test in urine performs very, very well. And the way it performs well is to use three markers. And when all three markers are used, the sensitivity and specificity is 90%. Now, I will admit that you really need to do a population test because specificity is determined by the prevalence of what you're testing in the population. But still, at this level, performing as well as it did, the test strikes me as rather important. Now, to show you what we're really talking about, let me call up the table here that has the performance characteristics on it. And what you'll see across the board here is that when all three markers that are used, and there are several markers used, but when all three markers of the best performing were used in urine, we come out with 90% sensitivity and 90% specificity. Those numbers are similarly high when we looked at self-sampling by scraping and by using a brush rather, and also when a physician would do the scraping, those numbers remain quite high. So my take on this is that these people have built on some results that other people have initiated for them, identified the markers, and they've done it in a way that they've gotten a good comparison and good results. Frank, what do you think?
Yes, I was very taken with the sensitivity and specificity. I mean, we've been involved in a lot of screening studies, and you've got to get somewhere like those numbers to make it an appropriate test. When I first looked at it, I thought this is not the real world, of course, because these patients had already been diagnosed with uterine cancers. Remember that 50% of them were not endometrial. We talked about carcinosarcomas and other ones. So these are not endometrial carcinomas, but nevertheless, the idea of self-testing, clearly these patients were already within the medical system. They were going to be advised by nurse practitioners or clinicians or whatever else to take how to take samples, and obviously to send a specimen off to a patient saying, please insert this into your vagina and take a scrape, just would not work. But as you said, the sensitivity and specificity of just a simple urine test is the way to go forwards. I think if you're going to extend this to a population, and again, as you said, you've got to give it out to a population to find out the true specificity. But sending a urine sample by mail is very straightforward and very simple. And I think the test has got a lot. And as the paper says, that if this reduces the number of invasive investigations for women with postmenopausal bleeding, because only 5% or 10% of women with PMB have got endometrial carcinoma, and the majority of women with endometrial carcinoma are not diagnosed because they've got problems like that. So I think this is a very, very interesting paper, and needs much further investigation. But I was very impressed with the way they'd run it, and the statistics that they'd shown.
Okay, very good. Well, I wanted to go on to something that is not practice altering, but very, very interesting. To me, it's very, very interesting. And
Yeah.
what it has to do with is that when we were training, the idea was that the genome had a lot of junk DNA in it that didn't do any good. Those conclusions were drawn because of the absence of reading frames and open reading frames and stop codons, that type of thing. So a lot of the genes we've been used to and comfortable with have been ones that came out of translation, and they had the translation had a function. And so the long and the short of this is the paper that appeared in Nature has highlighted the fact that the junk DNA is translated. It ends up being translated, transcribed and translated. And then what happens? Well, what happens is that there's a mechanism called using a BAG6 protein that is responsible for the initiation of degradation. That mechanism occurs because most of these transcribed to translated proteins that we consider junk have a hydrophobic region on them, and that BAG6 protein is able to interact with that, usually near the plasma membrane, and they're degraded. Now, those that are only partially degraded or aren't degraded at all can end up in the membrane itself and become an antigen as a tumor marker or for the immune system to look at. So how does this relate to the GYN malignancy? Well, the thing I'll call to your attention is that a group that has looked at about 15 cases of resistance to treatment in ovarian cancers has pointed out, also in the Nature journal, Nature Genetics, that when you go from the first primary to later on in late stage development, recurrence, or metastasis, the number of genes that you find is explosive, and the number of mutations in those genes is explosive. And so where are these things coming from? Well, probably they're coming from some of this stuff that we used to call junk DNA and transpositions. In other words, they're genes that have meaningful functions that get transposed into what was a junk gene, and they confer an advantage against drug treatment. And once again, relating this to GYN ONC, this can be related in this paper, which shows a tremendous amount of genes that are looked at and prevail from a large number of sites that were taken. And so I think this is not practice changing as much as it is suggestive to how to look at what happens. And I think it really means that if such an explosive appearance of resistance mechanisms to chemotherapy is appearing, then we have to make some more bets on early stage detection. That's where we need to place a lot of our money. So, Frank, what do you think?
Yes, I found the paper, as a clinician, and it's in Nature, I found the paper very, very difficult, I have to say. I mean, just one. Translation is pervasive outside of canonical coding regions, occurring in long non-coding RNAs, canonical untranslated regions, and introns. Now, that's a sort of opening line of a book where I probably would give up by the next paragraph. However, looking through it, it's clearly what we considered to be junk DNA is because we just didn't know what it did. That's, junk is something that other people don't want, or other people don't understand. One person's junk is another person's antique. And I think slowly we're beginning to realize how the genetic basis and the fact that a lot of the treatments we have for malignancies are futile because the genes are cleverer than the chemotherapy at the moment. They can repair them. So the genes of the cancer can repair themselves. I mean, we know that. And I thought from that point of view, when I read the paper further, I think rather like you, I think it's not going to change management at all. whilst we are clinicians, but I think it probably will within the next 2 or 3 decades. I think it's very, very important. It's interesting, just going up to something else, that when my father died, and I cleared out his loft, he had a lot of junk. He considered it junk because he didn't know what it was, and he just put it away and forgot about it. When my wife and I went, there's a lot of interesting stuff up there, and it's not junk. And I think this paper is exactly the same. It's there if we can just go and find it a use and something to in order to use what it's telling us, or what it could tell us. I think it was a fascinating paper, but I found it very difficult to read, I have to say.
Well, absolutely. I'm reminded when I was doing parlor magic, I was recommended to read a classic book in magic. And when I opened it up, the first page said, "First, produce an orange from behind a man's beard." And
Yeah,
well over my head. So
yeah, exactly. Can you do it now?
I do it for my 3-year-old and 5-year-old, because those are the people who don't say, "I know how you did it." They
Yes,
say,
exactly. Yeah.
"Wow, Jipa, wow."
Oh, very good. Yes. Yeah, very, very good paper, but way above what I could understand. But I can see its potential, and it's interesting. The paper that we reviewed previously, talking about the genetics of cancer. This is where it's all going to be, isn't it? We know that the majority, even probably all of cancers, are genetic with an environmental input, and to see that these cancers are clever enough. I'm now making cancers into humans. These cancers, or these genomes, are clever enough to outwit our armamentarium. It's pretty damn good, actually. It's pretty special.
Sure, and from an effectiveness to do it type of proposal, if we do it at the end and have to look at all the genes that have now come into view as part of the resistance mechanism with ovarian cancer, the simpler the problem is the earlier the problem is. There'll be less
Yeah,
things that we have to look at,
yeah.
and less things that will work against us. So anyway, hopefully we'll see some progress in this area, and maybe it'll also define things that can be targeted with blockades for resistance.
Yes, yes.
Well, Frank, we've done it again. We've completed another time with GYN
Excellent.
GYN ONC Garage.
Okay.
So you have fun. Take
Yeah.
care.
And
Don't
we'll
get
meet
too
again
much
next
sun.
month.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll see you next month.
Okay then. Bye-bye now. Bye.